Exclusive contracted novel by Feilu Novel Network. Wuxia. Me, Wudang Wine Sword Immortal Chen Changsheng traveled through the comprehensive martial arts and became Zhang Sanfeng's little disciple, Wudang Junior Uncle. Also activate the system and start by playing the role of Imperial Sword riding the wind, eliminating the Wine Sword Immortals in the demon world. So there was an additional Sword Immortal in Wudang who drank all day long for pleasure. With wine, I am carefree, without wine, I am also restless. Why not be happy? Imperial Sword Technique, Drunken Immortal Moon Watching Step, Wine God Mantra. Various immortal methods beyond the mortal realm were used from his hands, shocking the world. One sword shines in the sky, 10,000 sword officials wear uniforms, and the sword's meaning severs the heavens and earth. Heaven doesn't give birth to me, the Wine Sword Immortal. The swordsmanship will last forever like a long night. Chen Changsheng transformed into a Wine Sword Immortal, walking among the martial arts world, leaving behind the myth of invincibility. 3 million heavenly sword immortals, you must also bow your brows when you see me. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. World of Martial Arts, Wudang Drunkard Junior Uncle. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The Ming Dynasty. Wudang Mountain. This is the location of the martial arts mythological Zhang Sanfeng Immortal Dojo. At this moment, on top of the stacked peaks of clouds, in front of the Purple Sky Palace. Zhang Sanfeng sat upright in the palace, wearing a plain Taoist robe and white eyebrows. His face was neither sad nor happy, and words were revealed from his mouth, echoing like a bell in the palace square. The gate of all wonders is both mysterious and mysterious. Zhang Zhenren spoke up, telling the profound and obscure meanings of the scriptures. Outside its hall, numerous Wudang disciples listened attentively on the square, their faces devout and solemn. At the top of many disciples, there are also 7 individuals with unusual identities sitting upright. They are the personal disciples of Zhang Sanfeng, the 7 heroes of Wudang. However, these 7 well-known figures in the martial arts world were all frowning at this moment. Their eyes were intentionally or unintentionally glancing at another futon beside them. There is no one on top. And originally, their junior brother was supposed to be here. Changsheng junior brother must be drinking again. Alas, during normal times, he just indulges in drinking in his own residence. But our master said this time that he wants to explain the profound meaning of scriptures to us, so that we can cultivate ourselves and cultivate our character. No one can be absent, and he still does so. It's really a bit inappropriate. The 7 heroes of Wudang share the same principle as Lianji, but they also love their younger martial brothers the most. Of course, I don't want him to be punished either. At this moment, he was also whispering to himself, discussing countermeasures. However, at this moment, everyone seemed to have a slight sense and their eyes were all cast towards the rear. A slightly skinny young man slowly climbed up the stairs and arrived at the square where everyone was located. But what makes everyone strange is, on this occasion, the young man was holding a wine jar in his hand. He seemed to have no sense of the atmosphere at the scene, swaying left and right, then looking up, flipping the wine jar upside down and pouring a large mouthful of liquid into his mouth. Immediately after, his eyes were hazy, and he muttered drunkenly to himself. The call from the sky cannot board the ship, claiming that I am a fairy in wine. This rebellious and free-spirited posture left a great impression on everyone. Many disciples all know this young man. He is the junior brother of Wudang's 7 heroes, the junior uncle of everyone, Chen Changsheng. In fact, this is not the first time Chen Changsheng has done so. Among sects like Wudang, he can be said to be an extremely special existence. Everyone rarely sees this young master. He usually hides in his residence and keeps brewing various wines. Even though he appeared in front of everyone a few times, he still maintained a drunken demeanor as he does today. However, they didn't expect that the young master would be late for such an important lecture today and come over drunk, which really shocked everyone. The top position of the disciples was also sensed by Song Yuanxiao and others, who turned around to see this scene. That's it. With such a drunken state, I'm afraid we can't escape punishment. Alas, why did such a decadent junior apprentice emerge from our Wudang martial arts holy land? Song Yuanxiao, Yu Lianzhou and others shook their heads secretly, feeling a bit helpless and muttering to themselves. They remember that when my junior apprentice first joined Wudang at a young age, he was very eager to learn and was deeply loved by his master. Why did you develop a bad habit of drinking after getting a little older? Let's talk about Chen Changsheng at this time. He naturally doesn't know and doesn't care about everyone's thoughts. Looking up again, he took the last sip of wine from the wine jar. Chen Changsheng breathed a long sigh of satisfaction. And at this moment, a voice that only he could hear rang out. Ding, the host's kendo perception has increased by 5%. Congratulations to the host for receiving the reward. The skill, Imperial Sword Technique. Upon hearing this voice, Chen Changsheng showed a knowing smile. He knows that the system's reward has been credited. That's right, it's the system. In fact, Chen Changsheng was not originally a person from this world. Just over a decade ago, when I woke up, I traveled to this world. But this world far exceeded his imagination. For example, his master is Zhang Sanfeng. His senior brother is the 7 heroes of Wudang. This not only that. In this world, there are various characters that he feels familiar with. There is the leader of the beggars sect, Xiao Feng. With just one dragon subduing 18 palms, he is invincible in the world. There is Yigucheng, the sword saint of Baiyun City, who wields a move called Flying Immortal from outside the sky, that dominates the world, and his swordsmanship is unparalleled. There is also Xiao Li Tanhua and Li Xuanhuan. With a flying knife, there is no false hair. Even the legendary saying, when the sun rises in the east, only I am invincible, is in this world. The most important thing is, these characters are all still at their peak now. When he first entered this world, Chen Changsheng was still a bit excited. After all, these characters were very famous. He also wants to see the charm of these contemporary figures. And Chen Changsheng also awakened the unparalleled wine immortal system. After the system is activated, the first one is directly bound to the wine sword immortal template. The more wine I drink, the stronger my sword will be. This is the function of the system. As long as you keep drinking, your swordsmanship cultivation can continuously improve. In addition, there are various talents for brewing. With the support of the system, the wine brewed by Chen Changsheng will also have various adverse effects. As Chen Changsheng had previously drunk, he integrated his insights into swordsmanship into it. As long as you drink alcohol, you can directly enhance your understanding of swordsmanship without the need for difficult comprehension. At this point, there are various other talents that the system can enhance with various effects of immortal brewing. The system will also occasionally drop various generous rewards. But it is precisely because of this that Chen Changsheng appears so out of place in Wudang. After all, only by diligently practicing martial arts all day long can others achieve improvement. But Chen Changsheng only needs to drink alcohol every day to continuously strengthen himself. This is comparison. This is the gap, so even if others don't understand, it can't stop him from improving his drinking. Having a system, it's really amazing. After drinking the wine in his hand, Chen Changsheng's mind moved and he took out a pot of wine from his pocket. Bang! Remove the seal of the wine jug with one hand. Seeing this, everyone in Wudang looked at Chen Changsheng silently. Drinking one pot is not enough, why a second pot? What a rotten drunkard! Everyone thought so helplessly in their hearts. And just as everyone's faces were complex, a figure stood up from the top of the dough. Changsheng Junior brother, how could you be so lawless? The Master explains the profound meaning of scriptures in order to help us meditate, calm our minds and maintain harmony. This is the most solemn thing in Wudang. But you're indulging in drinking here, it's like offending your master's authority. What crime should you take? Chapter 2. Sword cheat crosses 30,000 miles, one sword shines cold. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Everyone followed the sound and looked. It was Zhang Sanfeng, one of the 7 heroes of Wudang, who stood up and scolded Chen Changsheng. And the others, such as Yin Lighting and Mo Xinggu, secretly extended their thumbs to him. This is actually a strategy they just secretly discussed. What they are thinking is that the current state of the junior apprentice is bound to be punished by the master. So they, the 7 heroes of Wudang, decided to first get angry and sing a black face, and punish their eldest martial brother. But it's just thunder, rain, and little. In that case, the master won't be able to get angry. That's why we have this scene now. Song Yuanxiao and others also spoke up in a timely manner. Yes, junior brother. Practicing in Wudang is not just a child's play, we need to take it seriously. Changsheng junior brother, when it comes to practicing martial arts, one should peck and drink. Apart from understanding, the most important thing is to persist. Although they love their junior brother, they don't want to see Chen Changsheng so slack. The words spoken by the 7 warriors of Wudang at this moment are not just for the sake of making a bad face, but also for the real purpose of helping the younger martial brother pick himself up. However, at this moment, facing the pretended reprimand of the 7 warriors of Wudang, Chen Changsheng seemed to be drunk and powerless, collapsing to the ground. He gave a drunken glance at Zhang Sanfeng and others, let out a hiccup, and said, "Senior brother, don't be angry. Although junior brother is drinking, he is also practicing. It's just that the martial arts path I cultivate is different from yours." After speaking, he took another sip of the liquor from the wine jar. At this moment, the 7 heroes of Wudang all turned black, thinking that this was an excuse made by Chen Changsheng. It's just to perfunctory them. They haven't heard of how drinking alcohol can help them understand martial arts cultivation. Not waiting for Zhang Sanfeng and others to get angry. At this moment, inside the Zixiao Palace, the sound of a grand bell could be heard. What's so noisy outside the hall? Upon hearing this statement, not only the 7 heroes of Wudang, but also all Wudang disciples were shocked. This voice is the true Zhang Sanfeng, the leader of Wudang and known as the mythological figure of the martial arts world. And seeing that the master had already noticed, the 7 heroes of Wudang couldn't help but feel a bitter expression on their faces. They originally wanted to exonerate their junior apprentice, but by now they had already caught the attention of their master. At this moment, Zhang Sanfeng turned around and respectfully said to the hall, "Master, Changsheng junior brother has been drinking again in public. However, master, don't be angry. My elder brother is like a father. Please allow me, master, and I will teach you a good lesson." The rest of the Wudang 7 heroes couldn't help but be taken aback when they heard Zhang Sanfeng's words at this moment. But it didn't stop either. Perhaps they also hoped that Zhang Sanfeng can sober up the younger martial brother and prevent him from continuing to be so decadent. After Zhang Sanfeng finished reporting, he turned around and wielded his sword, saying to Chen Changsheng, "Since junior brother feels that it has not delayed your cultivation, then I will test your homework. I'll play 3 moves. If you can't take it, then you'll be fined 3 months imprisonment, and no alcohol is allowed during this period." When the 7 heroes of Wudang heard Zhang Sanfeng's decision, they also thought it was good. Because in their eyes, junior brother has indeed indulged himself a bit recently. I'm afraid in a few years, Song Qingshu, the son of senior brother Song Yuanxiao, will surpass him. How can the identity of Changsheng junior brother, a personally passed down disciple, be subdued by the public if this continues? It is also excellent for Zhang Sanfeng, who has always been upright, to teach his junior brother a lesson and help him wake up as soon as possible. As for whether Chen Changsheng can resist Zhang Sanfeng's 3 moves, they all believe there is no doubt. You should know that Zhang Sanfeng's martial arts skills are deeply loved by his master. In today's martial arts world, he is known as the Silver Hook and Iron Strike. His swordsmanship is superb, and there are few opponents in the martial arts world. It would be most appropriate to take action now to teach Changsheng Junior brother a lesson. Not only the 7 heroes of Wudang, but also many Wudang disciples around him believe that Chen Changsheng must have lost at this time. Junior uncle, this time it's been tough. After 3 months of confinement, we can't escape. You can't blame Uncle Wu for living here. To be honest, Uncle Xiao has indeed become a bit addicted to alcohol. I saw him drunk in the martial arts arena a few days ago. This time, the senior uncles should have been determined to teach the young senior uncles a lesson. 80% of them can't run away. Numerous disciples gathered together to discuss, occasionally glancing at the drunken Chen Changsheng. Zhang Sanfeng had a solemn expression and looked at Chen Changsheng. Junior brother, don't blame me. It's really not a way for you to continue to be decadent like this. If you give up now and are willing to be imprisoned for 3 months to quit drinking, I am willing to plead for master. At this moment, Chen Changsheng happened to have finished his 2nd pot of wine. He casually threw the wine jug, leaped forward, and stood directly in front of Zhang Sanfeng. However, perhaps due to the onset of alcohol abuse, Chen Changsheng suddenly stumbled. Moreover, he squinted his eyes and shook his head for a long time before finally determining the location of Zhang Sanfeng. Zhang Sanfeng frowned slightly when he saw this scene. His ideas are different from those of other martial brothers, and the other 6 heroes are thinking about how to make the young martial brother get rid of his guilt. But it seems that this situation cannot be tolerated. If junior brother continues like this, he will be completely useless. Zhang Sanfeng believes that it is necessary to teach his junior brother a lesson and know his mistakes in order to be good to him, instead of indulging blindly. Then, Zhang Sanfeng shook his head and said in a deep voice, "It seems that you still don't know your mistake. Draw your sword and let me see your enlightenment." Amidst everyone's gaze, Chen Changsheng reached into his arms as if there was no one around. Then, surprisingly, he took out a wooden sword that was only a few feet long. Then, holding a wooden sword, he looked at Zhang Sanfeng with a resolute attitude of fighting. Hiccup. Wudang Chen Changsheng, teach me. This scene made everyone couldn't help but laugh. Wooden sword. Little martial uncle wouldn't just want to rely on this wooden sword to confront Zhang martial uncle, would he? This. A wooden sword several feet long, isn't it a child's thing? Ah, junior uncle is really drunk and confused. Isn't it that junior uncle knows he's invincible and has already given up, just waiting to be beaten? This time, everyone couldn't help but whisper and looked at Chen Changsheng with strange eyes. Chen Changsheng's various actions are completely incomprehensible to everyone. At this moment, even Song Yuanxiao and others had no choice but to pat their foreheads. This junior brother is too playful. He's drunk and unconscious, using a child's wooden sword. I'm afraid there's no need to use any moves. After a while, he'll be drunk himself. At this moment, Zhang Sanfeng shook his head in the field and said in a deep voice, "Junior brother, you're really disappointing me. It seems that in the future, we can't let you get any more alcohol." After speaking, Zhang Sanfeng put on a fighting posture and prepared to take action. However, at this moment, Chen Changsheng suddenly looked up and looked at Zhang Sanfeng. Spirited in an instant, 2 blazing cold lights bloomed. Sword intent, terrifying sword intent. The sword energy spans 30,000 miles, and one sword shines cold on 19 continents. His entire aura also changed suddenly. Fierce. Cold. Show your sharpness. Like an unsheathed sword. With just a glance, Zhang Sanfeng's figure suddenly paused. The action that was originally planned to be attacked and killed was also abruptly stopped. Meanwhile, in the Purple Sky Palace. Sitting cross-legged on a cattail, wearing a plain Taoist robe, Zhang Sanfeng, with his fairy-like demeanor, suddenly turned his gaze towards the outside of the Purple Sky Palace. What a sharp sword-like sharpness! Zhang Sanfeng's face showed a surprised expression. Chapter 3. 3,000,000 Heavenly Sword Immortals, Even If You See Me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhang Sanfeng also stopped his pace in an instant, his gaze filled with suspicion. At that moment, he suddenly felt an unprecedented surge of sword intent. Even to the point where his figure was beaten up. It is not fear, but rather a person pursuing swordsmanship, sensing the pure and terrifying fluctuation of sword intent. How could this be possible? Was it the aura emanating from elder martial brother just now? Why did he possess such a terrifying sword intent? Zhang Sanfeng's heart was filled with uncertainty at this moment. However, the sword intent just now was too pure. Under the impact of this sword intent, it even triggered the constant stirring of Zhang Sanfeng's true qi inside his body. At this moment, Zhang Sanfeng entered a mysterious and miraculous state. At this moment, outside the Purple Sky Palace, there was a standoff between two people in the field. Chen Changsheng remained in a drunken posture, holding a wooden sword. Even, his body occasionally stumbled, as if he would fall the next second and completely get drunk. However, his eyes were incredibly clear. At this moment, Zhang Sanfeng suddenly closed his eyes, wielding a sword with one hand, and stood in the field. Everyone is puzzled. What's wrong with Uncle Zhang? Why did he close his eyes? Is it running true qi? But it won't be so slow, will it? Is it because Uncle Zhang's heart has softened? A group of Wudang disciples whispered and looked puzzled. The sword intent that erupted from Chen Changsheng was only momentary, and no one had time to sense it. But Zhang Sanfeng is closest and can best feel the profound swordsmanship within it. The 7 heroes of Wudang, including Song Yuanxiao, also had some doubts. They were just about to call out to Zhang Sanfeng. At this moment, Sanfeng has just entered a state of enlightenment, there's no need to disturb him. A warm and steady voice came from behind them, full of peculiar rhythm. Song Yuanxiao and others turned their heads and saw their master Zhang Sanfeng dressed in plain clothes, with white hair and a childlike appearance, as if he had a transcendent temperament, like a fairy. See master. See master. Song Yuanxiao and others bowed and bowed when they saw Zhang Sanfeng. When Wudang disciples saw Zhang Zhenren appear, they also kept silent and dared not speak much. But Zhang Sanfeng nodded and didn't say much. He looked calmly at the audience. Everyone also turned their gaze to the two people in the field. Subsequently, everyone only saw Zhang Sanfeng's body explode with momentum, surrounded by smoke and dust. Everyone was amazed. Because they felt that Zhang Sanfeng's realm had actually broken through. For a long time, Zhang Sanfeng slowly opened his eyes and gave Chen Changsheng a complex glance. Then, he put away his long sword and bowed to Chen Changsheng, saying, "Thank you for your guidance, junior brother." When this statement was made, everyone was extremely shocked. They didn't understand what had happened, why suddenly Zhang Sanfeng thanked Chen Changsheng. However, only Zhang Sanfeng himself is aware of this. At the moment when the sword intent surged out just now, it directly triggered the true qi in his body and successfully broke through the current state. All of this can be said to be a coincidence, but Zhang Sanfeng is a person of integrity. Even if it was unintentional, it was still related to Chen Changsheng, so he was able to immediately put down his position and thank Chen Changsheng. This. Song Yuanxiao and others were all confused and didn't know what had happened. At this moment, Zhang Sanfeng stroked his white beard and looked at Chen Changsheng with warm eyes, saying, "Changsheng, you have extraordinary talent and a hangover all day long. How can you gradually progress in martial arts?" Although Zhang Sanfeng's words were light, they were deafening. As soon as this statement was made, Song Yuanxiao and others were all looking at Chen Changsheng. However, when the master knew about the drinking situation of Changsheng Junior brother, he just smiled indifferently and didn't pay much attention. So all the senior brothers are left to their junior brothers. This led to Changsheng Junior brother's addiction to alcohol. Can't even the master now tolerate the actions of Changsheng Junior brother. However, if even the master speaks out and scolds, then there is no fear that Changsheng Junior brother will not listen. Speaking of Chen Changsheng at this moment, upon hearing Zhang Sanfeng's words, his face remained calm and calm. Master, we were born in heaven and earth, and everything is for cultivation. Even though the disciples have a hangover every day, they still practice martial arts. Upon hearing this, Zhang Sanfeng smiled, as if intending to test Chen Changsheng's understanding of swordsmanship. Oh. Do you have any methods for cultivating martial arts? Zhang Sanfeng asked so. Upon hearing Zhang Sanfeng's inquiry, Chen Changsheng remained calm and composed, speaking loudly. Turning 1,000,000 miles with one body, one sword can block billions of immortals. 3,000,000 heavenly sword immortals, you must also bow your brows when you see me. The words fell, but Zhang Sanfeng's whole body suddenly shook. Subsequently, his eyes lit up and he looked at Chen Changsheng with an incredible gaze. 3,000,000 heavenly sword immortals, must you also bow your brows when you see me? Zhang Sanfeng repeated Chen Changsheng's previous words with a pensive expression on his face. After a moment, he stroked his white beard and laughed. Okay. What a sky sword immortal with 3,000,000, you must bow your brows even when you see me. Chang'er, how ambitious. Zhang Sanfeng's face couldn't conceal a happy expression. Many Wudang disciples were stunned as they watched this scene. What happened today is just too dreamy. Zhang Sanfeng was also stunned by Chen Changsheng's words. I never thought that my always decadent junior brother would have such great ambitions. Zhang Sanfeng nodded and said with a smile on his face. In the future, the matter of drinking alcohol for longevity has been agreed upon by the old Taoist. Upon hearing these words, Chen Changsheng also smiled and respectfully said to Zhang Sanfeng. Thank you very much, master. After leaving such a sentence, Zhang Sanfeng stroked his white beard and left with a smile. At this moment, the 7 warriors of Wudang looked at Zhang Sanfeng who had left, and then at Chen Changsheng, who was drunk and had a shaky figure. The faces of everyone also became incredibly strange. Is this still the drunken junior brother we usually see? Such doubts arose in the hearts of everyone. Chapter 4. Everyone is drunk, I wake up alone, drunk for 3 days. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Is this still the decadent drunkard junior brother in our impression? Song Yuanxiao, Yin Lighting, and others were a bit confused. Fifth brother, your realm. What happened just now? Song Yuanxiao spoke up and asked Zhang Sanfeng in such a low voice. Who would know that this young junior brother, who is usually drunk and lacks any martial arts demeanor? But instead, his words made the master agree to his drinking. So everyone was a bit incredulous at this moment. Mainly because they didn't feel the surge of sword intent just now. So it's not clear why Zhang Sanfeng suddenly elevated his level. And why is this related to junior brother again? Upon hearing the questioning from the fellow disciples, Zhang Sanfeng shook his head and said seriously. Changsheng junior brother's swordsmanship is exquisite and extraordinary. In that moment, I felt as if he had transformed into a sword. At this point, everyone's expression froze. What did junior brother do in such a short period of time just now? Everyone turned to look at Chen Changsheng, wanting to see how he reacted. He stood up unsteadily and smiled at everyone. Then, taking a big sip of wine, he confidently smiled and said. Everyone is drunk, I wake up alone. Everyone wakes me up and I'm drunk alone. As Chen Changsheng's words fell, his aura changed greatly. This time, it's no longer targeted at one person. But all Wudang disciples present can clearly sense such changes. In an instant, Chen Changsheng was no longer the drunken Wudang Junior Uncle. The surging sword intent enveloped Chen Changsheng. That kind of sword intent makes Wudang disciples change their colors. This kind of sword intent is really terrifying. Zhang Sanfeng was stunned and lost his mind, muttering to himself. He is known as the most talented disciple in Wudang, especially in terms of swordsmanship and divine mastery. However, even so, in the face of the vast sword intent released by Chen Changsheng at this moment, Zhang Sanfeng also felt ashamed and impure. Even that is no longer a sword-like intent. At this moment, Chen Changsheng himself is a sword. Even when standing in the arena, everyone felt something in their hearts. Is this the legendary sword meaning? Song Yuanxiao and others exclaimed in surprise. They didn't expect that this young apprentice of the drunkard had such a profound realm. At such a young age, I have come into contact with swordsmanship so deeply. This profound feeling has only been sensed by one person. That is, they are masters, known as Immortal Zhang Sanfeng of Mount Taishan in the Wulin. At this moment, everyone was even more shocked. Can it be said that Chen Changsheng's junior martial brother's swordsmanship is already on par with his master? At this moment, Chen Changsheng's movements did not stop. He said drunkenly, "I am the Wudang wine sword immortal. With wine, I am carefree, without wine, I am also restless. Only with a sword can I sever the heavens and earth." Before he could finish speaking, his palm suddenly flipped. Then, holding up the wooden sword in his hand, as his footsteps swayed, the sword moved with him, wielding power throughout the universe. For a moment, everyone's pupils suddenly shrank as they saw a sudden gust of wind in the field. The wooden sword erupted with unparalleled power, breaking through the air and arriving. In an instant, while Chen Changsheng was drunk, he waved his wooden sword in his hand. In the blink of an eye, he used countless sword moves, which were full of unique artistic conception. Song Yuanxiao and others saw this scene, their eyes flickering with light. Sigh, even a mere wooden sword can unleash such a wonderful sword move. I feel the drive of the sword's intent from this sword. Everyone took a deep breath of air, shocked and shocked. This was purely driven by the sword's intent, which allowed a wooden sword to erupt into a wonderful realm in Chen Changsheng's hand. Buzz! Buzz! At this moment, the square in front of the Zixiao Palace suddenly rang out with dull murmurs. In an instant, all the Wudang disciples using swords in the field found that their swords were suddenly constantly trembling and chirping in the scabbard, as if they had been hooked by something. This phenomenon stunned all the disciples. What's going on? My sword feels like it's about to break free from its sheath. Me too, I feel like I can't hold my sword anymore. What's the situation? It's too cult. Oh no, I let go of my sword. At the next moment, hundreds of swords in the field suddenly broke free from their master's scabbard and plunged into the ground, their bodies constantly humming and swaying. When all Wudang disciples saw this situation, goosebumps kept popping up on their bodies, and they had no idea what had happened. Song Yuanxiao, Zhang Sanfeng, and others watched this scene with great shock. 10,000 swords resonate, 100 swords submit. Such an unparalleled demeanor makes every Wudang disciple in the field extremely excited and envious. Sword out of the air. Heart and sword connect. At this moment, although Chen Changsheng was already drunk, he seemed like a swordsman, commanding the swords. The disciples were so shocked that they had no choice but to use their full magical power to suppress the almost violent sword. For a long time, the vast sword-like intent gradually dissipated, and all the swords stopped trembling. At this moment, as the sword's intent converged, Chen Changsheng's whole body softened and he collapsed directly to the ground. Everyone was surprised. Could it be that Chen Changsheng had exhausted his true qi and fainted? Changsheng junior brother. Song Yuanxiao and others quickly rushed to Chen Changsheng's side, helped him up, and softly shouted. However, at this moment, Chen Changsheng could only breathe long and occasionally dream a few words. Even under the gaze of everyone, he started snoring. This is not about overdrawing true qi and fainting. It's clear that he's completely drunk and unconscious. Everyone looked at each other with a helpless expression. I finally understand why the master agreed to let the junior apprentice drink. Such talent is indeed different from ours. Song Yuanxiao gave a bitter smile and said so. Zhang Sanfeng and others also nodded. They also did not expect that this Changsheng junior brother could comprehend such swordsmanship, which is truly remarkable. Let's send the young junior brother back to his residence. The 7 heroes of Wudang all agree. They originally wanted to ask Chen Changsheng why he had such a profound foundation in swordsmanship. But at this point, perhaps we can only wait for Chen Changsheng to sober up. And Chen Changsheng's drunkenness lasted for 3 whole days and 3 nights. Chapter 5. The name of wine Sword Immortal, Wudang shakes. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. During these 3 days, the name of Chen Changsheng is constantly mentioned throughout Wudang Mountain. Little martial uncle only relied on a short wooden sword to make Zhang give up without fighting. Afterwards, he relied on a sword dance to directly make all the swords of the disciples present submit. The scene from the beginning is still talked about by many disciples of Wudang. Thinking of Chen Changsheng's sword dance directly resonated with Wudang's swords, and everyone's faces were filled with longing and excitement. They all thought that the young master was ignorant of worldly affairs and had nothing to do except drink all day. But I didn't expect that junior uncle was hiding deep and not showing his sharpness. Especially his sentence, everyone is drunk, I wake up alone, everyone is awake, I wake up alone. Isn't it just the right way to fulfill his mood? During this short period of time, Chen Changsheng's popularity in Wudang has directly increased. Some people even spread the famous name of wine Sword Immortal that he had spoken of around the world. And all of this, Chen Changsheng was completely unaware. On this day, a fierce and unparalleled aura suddenly erupted in the Taihe Palace of Wudang. The 7 warriors of Wudang followed their breath in the heart of the side hall. Master, have you passed the level? Master, this time we closed the door, the candles in the room never stopped, and he even ordered us not to disturb. Is there anything that might happen? Song Yuanxiao said with a worried expression. Upon hearing this, Yu Lianzhou nodded and thought for a moment before saying, so it seems that master is probably studying martial arts. I don't know either. What kind of martial arts will the master develop this time? Speaking of this, everyone is extremely thoughtful. Since the master returned from Xixiao Palace Square at that time, he had locked himself in the main hall and instructed them not to disturb him unless there was anything else to do. And the 7 of them were worried about their master's health, so they had been waiting in the side hall. At this point, it seems that the master has already passed the level. At this moment, Yin Lighting pondered and said. At that time, when my master was in seclusion, I seemed to see him holding a long sword. Could it be that my master was studying martial arts and swordsmanship? This speculation surprised everyone else. Zhang Sanfeng rubbed his chin and said, it seems that the master started to shut down after meeting his junior brother in the square at that time. Perhaps there was some connection between this. The words fell. Wudang's 7 heroes and others thought for a moment, but after a while, they looked at each other in confusion. At this moment, from the main hall, a calm and ethereal voice came. Students, come over here. When the 7 heroes of Wudang heard this sound, their bodies trembled. So they all stood up and rushed to the main hall as soon as possible. Not long after arriving, Zhang Sanfeng walked out of the room carrying a brush, and they quickly bowed. Goodbye, master. After a few days without seeing each other, Zhang Sanfeng not only did not show any signs of decline, but also became much more energetic. His aura was ethereal, giving him a refreshing feeling. Master's cultivation compared to last time we met, I have improved a lot. Song Yuanxiao and several others had this idea in their minds. Zhang Sanfeng sat in plain clothes, like an exiled immortal in the world, nodding with a slight smile. Then he said, "This time in seclusion, I have benefited a lot as a teacher, and can be considered to have developed a profound set of martial arts. It's called Tai Chi sword technique." Zhang Sanfeng stroked his beard and slowly said, "This set of martial arts, as a teacher, is completely different from today's martial arts. It emphasizes the concealment of sharpness, concealment without firing, using stillness to break, and catching others later." Speaking of which, what Zhang Sanfeng thought of was a hint of relieved smile. The old Taoist was able to master this set of martial arts thanks to Changsheng. The sword intent hidden in his sharp edge not only helped Suishan break through, but also made me realize a lot. Upon hearing these words, all 7 Wudang heroes looked surprised. What? Master was able to learn a new set of martial arts, but it was because of junior brother. If they were just speculating before. But now, upon hearing the master's personal confirmation, everyone's hearts were even more shaken. Zhang Suishan nodded seriously and said, "That's right, junior brother's sword technique is both mysterious and profound, completely incomprehensible." Song Yuanxiao, Yu Lianzhou, and others were also somewhat stunned when they heard Zhang Suishan say so. You should know that Zhang Suishan is even recognized by their master as the most qualified among them. So, even the master and the 5th brother are saying this, it is definitely not wrong. We have all seen the sword intent of junior brother back then. But there is no insight at all. Song Yuanxiao still said with some disbelief. Upon hearing this, Zhang Sanfeng smiled and stroked his beard with his palm, saying gently, "Experience with heart, understanding is not in form, but in meaning." Song Yuanxiao and others looked at each other when they heard this sentence. As the chief disciples of major sects like Wudang, they also have their own fame in the martial arts world. But can't even comprehend a trace of my junior brother's artistic conception. Zhang Sanfeng smiled and said, "By the way, where is Changsheng now?" Song Yuanxiao smiled bitterly and said, "Report to master." After getting drunk that day, senior brother Changsheng had already slept for 3 days and 3 nights. So far, I haven't woken up yet. Upon hearing Song Yuanxiao's words, Zhang Sanfeng was taken aback and then smiled and said, "It's okay, then wait for him to wake up." In front of Zhang Sanfeng, upon hearing these words, the 7 heroes of Wudang were greatly excited. Master actually said to wait for Changsheng junior brother to wake up. Wait. As a martial arts expert, have you ever waited for others? Although the master usually doesn't care about the rules, the problem is that if others know that Zhang Zhenren wants to see him, they often rush to meet him and dare not neglect him. A few people couldn't help but look in the direction of Chen Changsheng's residence, feeling extremely emotional. "Changsheng junior brother, you have such great face." Chapter 6. Sword Enhancement, rewarding you long sword, heavenly. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In Chen Changsheng's residence. This day, the alcohol finally dissipated, and Chen Changsheng finally woke up. He looked out the window with empty eyes. Then, with a gesture of genuine qi, a jar of wine in the corner of the room immediately flew towards him. He knocked off the mud seal on the wine jar and poured half of it in one breath. I had an extremely comfortable alcohol hiccup, and then my eyes regained clarity. Wine Sword Immortal, the more you drink, the more sober you become. Not drinking makes it easier to get drunk. 3 cups connect the main road, and 1 bucket combines nature. Chen Changsheng sighed. As half a jar of fine wine was poured down, he immediately sensed clearly that there were sharp and majestic sword intent surging inside his body. That is the purest pinnacle of swordsmanship. The fusion of sword spirit into his body indicates that Chen Changsheng's swordsmanship has greatly improved. To outsiders, Chen Changsheng was drunk for 3 days and 3 nights. But he knew for himself that in these 3 days and 3 nights, the immortal wine he drank also released infinite sword intent. Gradually integrate into one's own physical body. Sure enough, the richer the wine, the stronger my sword will be. In the blink of an eye, the jar of wine that had just been taken out turned into an empty jar again. But Chen Changsheng's face became increasingly red. At this moment, the sound of the system sounded. Ding, the host's swordsmanship cultivation has been increased by 5%. Congratulations to the host for receiving rewards. Dragon Sword, Heavenly Fragrance Cardamom, Wine God Curse. 3 consecutive rewards fell, making Chen Changsheng happy. The first reward is the renowned and powerful sword, the Wudang sword. This sword is made of extraterrestrial black iron, invincible and extremely sharp. With one strike, all swords declare themselves loyal. Even when using sword moves, the sound of a dragon's chant will be emitted from the guard of the sword body, following the sword's footsteps, and the sound will arrive first. This Wudang sword is the embodiment of ultimate attack, easily capable of cutting off weapons and breaking mountains and rocks. After Chen Changsheng obtained this precious sword, he replaced the ordinary long sword that was originally carried behind him. The second reward, Tianxian Cardamom. There are only 3 of these divine medicines in the world, which are offered as tribute by small countries in the western regions. Eating one can detoxify the world's 100 poisons and turn dying people into living dead. Eating 2 can resurrect the living dead, but it can only live for 1 year. Eating 3 of them can bring you back to life like an ordinary person. Chen Changsheng believes that this fragrant cardamom is definitely good if it can be used for brewing. If this idea is known by the sentient beings in the martial arts world, they will definitely curse Chen Changsheng as a black sheep. Do you only want to use these supreme treasures to satisfy your appetite? It's simply a waste. However, he did not take immediate action. But instead, he turned his gaze to the final reward. The Wine God Curse. Chen Changsheng was somewhat surprised. This Wine God Curse can be said to be a very powerful martial arts skill, consuming most of one's true energy in the body. By destroying meridians, the true energy bursts out of the embankment, directly and maximally inflicting damage on enemies, with astonishing power. It can be said to be a super powerful move that self-damages 100 and harms the enemy 10,000. If this tactic breaks out in a desperate situation, it may produce a very terrifying power. Chen Changsheng realized the strength of this technique in an instant upon seeing it. When cultivated to perfection, true qi erupts from within the body, and the power it produces can even turn hard stones into powder. Under such an outbreak, no one in the world can stop it. This is the description of the Wine God Curse. The power of this Wine God Curse is so amazing. Chen Changsheng thought in surprise. Hard stones can also become powder. Just this description reveals a very terrifying power. And as far as he knows, the more he cultivates this Wine God Curse to the end, the more it will form a true qi barrier inside the body, and when it erupts, the damage to himself will be reduced to a very small amount. However, at this point, Chen Changsheng had no intention of paying attention to the system's rewards. After finishing a jar of wine, Chen Changsheng turned and walked towards the basement of his residence. That is where he hides his wine. After the system was activated, Chen Changsheng used all means to collect various fine wines in the world and placed them deep in the basement. Turn that into his wine cellar. However, as he approached the wine cellar, Chen Changsheng looked in front of him and was momentarily stunned. Only 2 jars left. Chen Changsheng was in a drunken state when he came to fetch wine several times in the past. Therefore, it was not noticed that his wine collection had been completely depleted. This wine is too unappealing to drink. Chen Changsheng muttered to himself helplessly. Without wine, how can one be called the Wine Sword Immortal? If the 7 heroes of Wudang were here, they would surely feel speechless at this moment. This drunkard junior brother has been drinking for several years, and it was only then that he finally finished drinking. This can't be said to be drunk. Besides, he keeps drinking all day and it's normal for him to pour after drinking. Just as Chen Changsheng was pondering where to find wine, the voice of Song Yuanxiao suddenly came from outside his residence. Changsheng Junior brother, are you awake? Master specially asked me to take you to see his elderly family. Upon hearing Song Yuanxiao's words, Chen Changsheng's face changed. If there is no wine in other places, but master, there must be. Zhang Sanfeng is the leader of Wudang sect. Therefore, during birthday banquets, it is certain that various sect leaders give gifts to make friends. As for fine wine, it should be even more indispensable. Chen Changsheng has seen more than once that the leaders of other sects have brought him good wine, which made him crave it so much. Moreover, the master didn't seem to enjoy drinking alcohol very much, and it was difficult to refuse other people's kindness at that time. So all of them have been collected, and over time, there must be a lot of hidden wine from Wudang sect. With this in mind, Chen Changsheng carried a jar of wine with him and walked out of his residence to the door. At this moment, Song Yuanxiao was standing outside the door, looking at Chen Changsheng. However, upon seeing Chen Changsheng's hand still in the wine jar, Song Yuanxiao's face immediately froze. But when I remembered that my master had already agreed to my junior brother's drinking, I didn't say anything more. Song Yuanxiao smiled and said, Master, I have learned a martial arts in the past few days and asked me to come and observe and learn it. I learned that you haven't woken up yet, so I didn't let us disturb you. I just wanted to come and see if you woke up today, but it happened. Upon hearing Song Yuanxiao's account, Chen Changsheng scratched his head and smiled, not expecting such an insider story. I'm sorry, senior brother Song. I'm a drunkard and I've caused you trouble. Chen Changsheng smiled and said, how could he know such a thing? However, he does apologize for delaying the cultivation of his senior brothers. Seeing this, Song Yuanxiao also smiled helplessly and said, Junior brother, as martial artists, we should prioritize cultivation. You are addicted to alcohol all day long, not to mention the harm to your body. Even the best of your health will drag you down. Upon hearing Song Yuanxiao's words, Chen Changsheng waved his hand and said, Life is full of joy, don't let the golden cup empty against the moon. After speaking, he took a big sip of wine and pulled Song Yuanxiao towards the hall where Zhang Sanfeng was located. P.S. Is there anyone else reading this book? Can you please make a comment in the book review? If you like it, please cast some flowers, monthly tickets, and review tickets please. Ball. Chapter 7. Wine Sword Immortal, of course, only interested in fine wine. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Not long after, Chen Changsheng and Song Yuanxiao entered the back mountain of the Taihe Palace. The mountain behind the Taihe Palace is covered with pine trees, which is where Zhang Sanfeng often practices martial arts. Chen Changsheng followed Song Yuanxiao through several corridors and arrived at an open space on the back mountain. Zhang Sanfeng, dressed in plain clothes, stood in the open space with a fairy-like demeanor. Behind him, Chen Changsheng saw that Zhang Zuishan and others were also present. Zhang Sanfeng was explaining something to Zhang Zuishan and others at the moment, but stopped when he saw Song Yuanxiao coming. Chen Changsheng arrived at the open space and bowed in front of Zhang Sanfeng. Goodbye master. Master. Hiccup. Chen Changsheng saluted and paid respects to Zhang Sanfeng. However, before he could finish speaking, he let out another wine hiccup. Seeing this, Zhang Sanfeng smiled gently and didn't care about Chen Changsheng's behavior either. Hee, grow up. As he spoke, Zhang Sanfeng reached out with a soft and genuine aura, lifting Chen Changsheng's bowing body. After Chen Changsheng stood up, he also greeted several senior brothers with a smile. However, after a few simple greetings, the senior brothers looked at him with different expressions. This made Chen Changsheng feel a bit confused, not understanding what had happened and why his senior brothers were looking at him like this. He scratched his head and said suspiciously, "What's wrong with this? However, the senior brothers did not respond. On the contrary, Zhang Sanfeng seemed to want to ask something, but in the end, he did not speak up. Zhang Sanfeng stroked his beard and smiled, saying, "All right, I will now demonstrate the Tai Chi sword technique to you again, master. Changsheng, take a look too." Upon hearing this, Chen Changsheng was taken aback for a moment. Tai Chi sword technique. Isn't this created by Master Zhang Sanfeng only when he was 100 years old? With this doubt in mind, Chen Changsheng also stood aside. At this moment, Zhang Sanfeng stood in the center wearing plain clothes, holding a long sword and slowly waving it in the air. Song Yuanxiao, Zhang Sanfeng, and others focused their gaze. Even Chen Changsheng was the same. After taking a sip of wine, he curiously watched. You should know that this set of swordsmanship was originally created by Zhang Sanfeng in his later years. The swordsmanship responds to all changes with immutability, and controls the sword with intention. It is constantly changing and extremely powerful. In the center of the open space, the sound of the long sword waving was continuous. Zhang Sanfeng and several other disciples were all dazzled and shocked. I am truly a master. Among them, the sword's meaning and charm are extraordinary, emphasizing the meaning rather than the form. Chen Changsheng followed the movement with his gaze and nodded in his heart, saying. More than 10 minutes later. As the sound of wielding the long sword fell, Zhang Sanfeng had already demonstrated and turned his head to ask Chen Changsheng. Changsheng, what do you think? Upon hearing these words, the other senior brothers also turned their heads to look at Chen Changsheng. This sudden question caught Chen Changsheng off guard, and the gesture of holding the wine jar to his mouth was also a pause. He scratched his head and said awkwardly. I completely forgot. This upon hearing these words, Song Yuanxiao and others immediately looked at each other. This junior brother is too careless, isn't he? After completing a set of sword moves, they all remembered a lot. Surprisingly, the junior brother completely forgot everything. I must have been indulging in drinking again. Before Song Yuanxiao and others could reprimand him, they suddenly realized that after hearing these words, the master suddenly stroked his beard and laughed. For a while, the 7 heroes of Wudang became even more puzzled. Master, this. Zhang Sanfeng smiled and said. It seems that Changsheng has understood the profound meaning behind it. Remember, this Tai Chi sword technique only focuses on its meaning and not on its movements. It is too rigid in its movements and may not be able to comprehend its subtle artistic conception. Upon hearing Zhang Sanfeng's words, the other senior brothers were instantly surprised. I never expected that my junior apprentice would have such a profound understanding, far surpassing them. Zhang Sanfeng took a deep breath, turned around and bowed to Chen Changsheng, saying. Junior brother is truly a martial arts prodigy. You can easily see the mysteries at a glance. As my elder brother, I need to learn more from you. Seeing this scene, Chen Changsheng was also somewhat confused. He never imagined that Zhang Sanfeng would suddenly ask him his opinion on Tai Chi sword. At that time, he only focused on drinking alcohol, although he remembered a few, and later he could restore it based on his swordsmanship, but now he really hasn't remembered much. However, it was unexpected that he was said to have comprehended the true meaning of the swordsmanship by chance. This was indeed something he didn't expect. At this moment, Song Yuanxiao smiled and said. Junior brother, your swordsmanship is amazing. Why haven't I seen you mention it a few years ago? Upon hearing this, the other senior brothers also had some doubts. Indeed, if it weren't for the young junior brother displaying his sword intent that day, they probably wouldn't have known that his swordsmanship was so terrifying. Upon hearing Song Yuanxiao's question, Chen Changsheng secretly exclaimed that it was indeed true. I can't tell them that I just woke up to the Wine Immortal system a few years ago. However, Chen Changsheng has already come up with a plan. He looked at Song Yuanxiao in confusion at this moment, took a sip of wine, and asked in confusion. Swordsmanship proficiency. What is senior brother saying? Junior brother doesn't quite understand. At this point, Song Yuanxiao and his senior brothers were stunned. They never expected that Chen Changsheng would have such an answer. Can't you drink too much again, junior brother? They looked at Chen Changsheng, who would occasionally lift the wine jar and gulp down on the wine, and thought of it this way. After a while, Song Yuanxiao probed and asked. Changsheng junior brother, 2 days ago you were drinking while performing in the martial arts arena of Zixiao Palace. Later, not only did you make Cui Shan suddenly realize, but you also drew the sound of swords and weapons at that time. Don't you remember all of these? Song Yuanxiao began to recount all the events that happened that day, hoping to awaken Chen Changsheng's memory. However, upon hearing these words, Chen Changsheng scratched his head and said. I only remember when Senior Cui Shan said he wanted to teach me a lesson, and then I obediently went over because I drank too much. Afterwards, I drank too much and didn't remember. Chen Changsheng said this with a pensive expression. Even now, he has shown a slightly drunken and hazy state. Drunk for 3 days and 3 nights, now just thinking about it, is it time to get drunk again? Seeing Chen Changsheng do seem to have no memory of anything, with only the appearance of a wine jar in his eyes, Song Yuanxiao felt a bit speechless. Emotion, this little junior brother, is completely shattered and doesn't remember anything. At this moment, Zhang Sanfeng smiled and stroked his beard, saying. Anyway, forget it, forget it. In fact, the origin of this set of Tai Chi swordsmanship as a teacher is also due to the swordsmanship you showed in the beginning. Speaking of which, what kind of reward do you need? Song Yuanxiao, Zhang Cuishan and others on the side also showed envy on their faces. Master has said so, then let the junior apprentice bring it up. In their imagination, the junior apprentice must want to learn a profound martial arts as a reward. Everyone was waiting for Chen Changsheng to speak at this moment. However, Chen Changsheng almost immediately said. Master, since you said that. Can you bestow fine wine on my disciples? Chapter 8. Going down the mountain. Isn't this delaying my drinking? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Rewarding fine wine and wine. Upon hearing these words, Song Yuanxiao and others were once again confused. Is that all? This is a great opportunity, but you only need a few jars of wine. I don't take it seriously at all. Song Yuanxiao even felt a bit heartbroken and looked at Chen Changsheng with a resentful expression. Changsheng junior brother doesn't seem like a genius with exceptional swordsmanship at this moment. He's clearly just a drunkard who loves alcohol. Upon hearing these words, Zhang Sanfeng burst into laughter and said. You are quite transparent. Since you only want fine wine, let Yuanxiao take you to the treasure trove to take 3 jars. However, as the words fell, Chen Changsheng scratched his head as if he had something else to say. Zhang Sanfeng is puzzled. Is there anything else Changsheng wants? After a while, Chen Changsheng exhaled a strong breath of alcohol before saying. Master, I'm not talking about a few jars. But I want all the wine in the cellar. After Chen Changsheng's words were spoken, even Zhang Sanfeng didn't react for a moment. After a moment, he said somewhat surprised. What do you mean, you want all the fine wine? Chen Changsheng drank the last sip of wine from the jar and then smiled at Zhang Sanfeng. Yes, master. I want all the fine wines on Wudang Mountain. Chen Changsheng actually planned it all in advance. In fact, even if Zhang Sanfeng didn't mention the request today, he would still find a way to get the fine wine. Wine Sword Immortal, how can we do without good wine? However, something unexpected for Chen Changsheng was that Zhang Sanfeng did not immediately agree, nor did he directly refuse. Instead, he let out a dumbfounded smile, and then Zhang Sanfeng said. Changsheng, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed with this request. This. Chen Changsheng couldn't understand what his master meant. At this moment, Song Yuanxiao beside him smiled and said, "Junior brother, you're going to be at the wrong time. Actually, because the master doesn't drink alcohol, many sex gifts a long time ago no longer included the item of fine wine. The few wines in the inventory now are from a long time ago." Upon hearing these words, Chen Changsheng collapsed instantly. He never expected that the development of this matter would be completely different from what he had imagined. Surprisingly, there is no alcohol left in the entire Wudang. For a moment, Chen Changsheng seemed to have lost his soul and didn't pay attention to what Song Yuanxiao would say next. The 7 heroes of Wudang looked at each other when they saw Chen Changsheng in such a state. At the same time, I sighed helplessly. Immediately, they turned their gaze to Zhang Sanfeng, hoping that the master could persuade the younger martial brother. Zhang Sanfeng was just about to say something. At this moment, suddenly a Wudang disciple ran over and handed a letter in his hand to Zhang Sanfeng. At this moment, Song Yuanxiao and others also turned their heads and looked over. They couldn't imagine for a moment who would send a letter to the master at this time. Zhang Sanfeng took the envelope and opened it to take a few glances. "See the situation?" Song Yuanxiao asked, "Master, who sent this letter from?" After reading the letter, Zhang Sanfeng remained silent for a few seconds and slowly said, "This letter was sent by Zhuolengshan of the Songshan sect." Songshan sect, left cold Zen. Upon hearing this, many disciples were puzzled. Left cold Zen of Songshan sect. Song Yuanxiao thought for a moment and said in confusion, "Isn't that the 5 sacred sword sect? Why did you send a letter to master? What's up?" Although both sides are orthodox sects, the friendship between the two sects is not very deep, and it can even be said that there are some small grudges. The reason is that the Songshan sect has always been trying to suppress the Wudang sect, both openly and secretly, and has caused many obstacles for Wudang disciples in the martial arts world. At this moment, surprisingly, a letter was given. This letter says, "The 5 Mountains Sword Sect now wants to elect a leader of the 5 Mountains Alliance to lead the 5 Mountains Sword Sect in jointly resisting the Sun and Moon Divine Cult. Therefore, we invite Wudang to come and observe." Upon hearing this news, Song Yuanxiao frowned and said, "Master, the left cold Zen of the Songshan sect has always been eyeing the position of Wudang as a leader in the martial arts world. At this time, the 5 Mountains Sword Sect's selection of the League's main venue is bound to be unprecedentedly strong. The 5 Mountains Sword Sect is the most powerful among the Songshan sect, and it is very likely that he will take over the identity of the leader of the 5 Mountains Alliance this time. I believe that because of this, he invited us to Wudang to observe the ceremony, probably to demonstrate against Wudang." After a moment of silence, Zhang Sanfeng slowly said, "The 5 Sacred Sword Sect has always formed alliances and supported each other. It is expected that the 5 Sacred Sword Sect will jointly launch the position of 5 Sacred Alliance leader this time. There is no need to worry about who will be the leader of this alliance, just observe the ceremony with peace of mind." After a pause, Zhang Sanfeng shook his head and smiled, "But since I'm old, I won't run that far anymore. Leave this matter to." Speaking of which, Zhang Sanfeng moved his gaze and glanced at the disciples in front of him. Until the end. It landed on Chen Changsheng. "Changsheng, why don't you make a trip for me?" Upon hearing his master call him, Chen Changsheng regained his senses, hiccuped and looked left and right, then pointed to himself. "Me." At this moment, Song Yuanxiao arched his hand and said, "Master, although my junior apprentice has the talent of being a genius. His words stopped here, but everyone present knew what Song Yuanxiao wanted to say. Although this Changsheng junior brother is said to be proficient in swordsmanship and divine mastery, looking at him now, apart from being full of alcohol, he never leaves the wine jar in his hands at any time. This kind of appearance, however, represents the Wudang ceremony, which is probably a bit inappropriate." At this moment, Chen Changsheng also said with a drunken and hazy eye, "Watching the ceremony. Isn't this delaying my drinking? The 7 heroes of Wudang originally thought Chen Changsheng would say something, but unexpectedly, the first sentence delayed his drinking. This left their senior brothers speechless. They even felt that it would be strange if this junior apprentice had completely awakened one day. And Zhang Sanfeng stroked his beard and smiled, saying, "No problem, Changsheng is the most suitable for this mission." "Alright, that's the decision. Changsheng, you're ready to go down the mountain in a few days." Chapter 9. 1,000 cups of drunkenness will not fall, only I, the wine sword immortal. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In the blink of an eye. It has been more than 10 days. There are only a few days left until the election for the position of leader of the 5 sacred mountains mentioned in the last letter. This day, Chen Changsheng held a wine jar in his hand and arrived at the foot of the mountain. He shook off the few remaining drops of wine from the wine jar, his expression somewhat depressed. In these 10 days, he finally drank all the wine in Wudang. As soon as he arrived at the foot of the mountain, he saw several senior brothers standing by the roadside besides his master. Chen Changsheng greeted his master and several senior brothers listlessly. Song Yuanxiao looked at Chen Changsheng helplessly, feeling both love and hate for this young junior brother. Despite having the talent of indulging in extravagance, he drinks excessively all day and gets drunk every day. Once there is no alcohol, the whole person loses their energy. At this moment, Zhang Sanfeng walked out and handed Chen Changsheng a gourd. "Changsheng junior brother, this is the only remaining bit of wine. It can be considered that senior brother has practiced it for you." Chen Changsheng saw the wine in Zhang Sanfeng's hand and quickly threw away the empty wine jar. With a flash of his body, he took the wine gourd from Zhang Sanfeng's hand. Everyone couldn't see his figure clearly. Chen Changsheng pulled the seal off the wine gourd and took a sip, feeling extremely happy. Good wine." Zhang Sanfeng looked at the empty hand in his hand and was taken aback. Then he gave a bitter smile and said, "Junior brother, with this lightness skill, I won't worry about your safety anymore." The other senior brothers also nodded in surprise, because they had just not seen clearly how their junior brother used his lightness skills. Just in an instant, he snatched the wine gourd from Zhang Sanfeng's hand. If Chen Changsheng had a sword in his hand, no one present except his master would be able to react to such lightness skills. Zhang Sanfeng stroked his beard and said, "Time is running out, so let's set off for Changsheng today." However, in addition to the 5 sacred sword sect, there are also major martial arts sects such as Amei and Shaolin going this time. Remember not to rush. After hearing this, Chen Changsheng nodded and said, "Don't worry, master." Subsequently, a Wudang disciple led a horse out of the stable and handed it over to Chen Changsheng. Chen Changsheng's figure spread out and he sat steadily on the horse's back. He bid farewell to Zhang Sanfeng and others, then rode his horse towards the distance. And Zhang Sanfeng and others. He kept staring at his figure and slowly left. "Master, why don't we go together?" "Yeah, junior brother must have just made his debut. Although he has good martial arts skills, he doesn't understand the dangers of the martial arts world." Upon hearing this, Zhang Sanfeng stroked his beard and smiled, "Don't worry. Although Changsheng has an easy-going personality, he far surpasses ordinary people in distinguishing right from wrong. Perhaps his future achievements may far surpass mine." After saying these words, Zhang Sanfeng comforted his beard and left. Song Yuanxiao and others looked at the master's departing figure and exchanged glances, their eyes filled with shock. At this moment, as one person and one horse gradually disappeared from sight in the distance, Chen Changsheng's voice could be heard vaguely. "With wine, I am carefree, without wine, I am also restless. 1,000 cups of drunkenness won't pour, only I, the wine sword immortal." I heard this majestic poem coming from afar. The several senior brothers of Song Yuanxiao looked at each other. I don't know what kind of realm junior brother is now. Zhang Sanfeng, with his hands on his back, looked towards the direction where Chen Changsheng had disappeared in the distance and sighed. I guess it's also innate, Song Yuanxiao said with uncertainty. Perhaps, as the master said, it is precisely the casual personality of the young junior brother that makes his achievements higher and higher. The 7 people of Wudang glanced at each other and then exhaled softly. In the martial arts world, their master is the famous Big Dipper in the Jianghu. His accomplishments have even reached the level of terrible land immortals. What is the concept of land immortals? Starting from entering the martial arts world, there are 12 levels acquired, 12 levels innate, and 9 levels of master. Continuing upwards, there is also the Great Master. Above the Great Master, there is also the realm of heaven and humanity. After the heavenly and human realm, you are the land immortals. And their master is highly respected and renowned. Although this is an honor for their several senior brothers, it is also a huge pressure. In recent years, although they have gained a lot of fame in the martial arts world and achieved the innate realm, but they all know it in their hearts. They are still far from the realm where their master is located. However, although they didn't say it on their lips now, it is very likely that Changsheng junior brother has such qualifications. The senior brothers looked at each other and then burst into laughter. On the other side, Chen Changsheng poured onto the horse's back, holding a wine gourd and pouring wine into his mouth. At this moment, the sword intent in his body was constantly stirring his meridians and body, and his qi and blood were rolling. If someone were to use their true qi to probe Chen Changsheng's body at this moment, they would probably be surprised. There is no other reason. What is constantly exploring Chen Changsheng's meridians is the incredibly pure and majestic sword intent. Each strand of these sword meanings emits an incredibly terrifying power, like substance. This represents that Chen Changsheng's swordsmanship has now reached a terrifying level. Sword intent, completely integrated with people. Even these sword meanings have greatly enhanced Chen Changsheng's true energy and body. The wine Sword Immortal template is exactly like that. The more intoxicated he is, the more relaxed and peak he is. Suddenly, a faint sound emanated from within Chen Changsheng's body, followed by a series of strong energy being ignited from all over his body. After a long time, Chen Changsheng exhaled. Finally promoted to the level of a master. That's right, Chen Changsheng at this time not only guessed that he was born to stop like the 7 heroes of Wudang, but also far exceeded their expectations. Now, as the wine liquefies into sword energy, it is stirred up. Chen Changsheng officially entered the realm of Grandmaster. Chapter 10 Goal. Brewing wine, drinking wine can keep you going. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Goal. Brewing wine, drinking wine can keep you strong. Duh. Accompanied by the sound of horses stepping on the ground, a horse slowly stepped from the dense forest onto the official road. On the back of this horse lay a handsome young man dressed in plain clothes. It's Chen Changsheng. And at this moment, he was lying on the back of his horse, flipping the already empty wine gourd in his hand, his drunken eyes hazy. The wine in the gourd was already drunk an hour ago. It's better to brew your own wine for better results. Chen Changsheng smacked his lips, as if reminiscing about the wine he had brewed. If the wine that was drunk during the Xixiao Palace martial arts performance before was brewed by Chen Changsheng himself. Although this wine is delicious, there is still something missing in the end. Speaking of which, this is the first time Chen Changsheng has gone down the mountain since he traveled to this world. He knew a long time ago that the martial arts world was very chaotic. Not only are there eastern and western second factories, royal guards, 6 gates, and other imperial forces. There are also martial arts forces such as Wudang, Amei, and Shaolin. Moreover, there are countless assassin organizations hidden in the dark, such as Blood Clothes Gate and Happy Forest. So, he had no intention of leaving Wudang until he had enough strength. But now he has reached the level of a master and can be considered a top figure in the entire martial arts world who can establish a sect. You should know that figures like the 7 heroes of Wudang, who have a great reputation in the martial arts world, are now only in their innate realm. Like Zhang Sanfeng, who has unparalleled talent, he is now only about 7 times his innate strength. In other words, at this time, from Chen Changsheng, in terms of cultivation level alone, he had surpassed all the second-generation disciples in the martial arts world, and was directly driven alongside the masters of some famous sects in the martial arts world. This kind of improvement speed can already be described as stunning talent. Of course, Chen Changsheng's purpose for going down the mountain this time is not only to observe the selection of the alliance leader by the 5 sacred sword sect. There is one more important thing that's just looking for wine. He is a wine sword immortal. And it is also bound to the system, as long as you constantly drink alcohol, your swordsmanship cultivation in personal realm will continue to improve. But the problem is that he has already finished drinking all the wine on Wudang Mountain. The wine I brewed myself has also bottomed out. Although the previously rewarded Tianxiang cardamom can be used for brewing, it is also an excellent choice. However, to make wine, only Tianxiang cardamom is obviously not enough. Other genius treasures or spiritual fruit medicines need to be added to it. The wine brewed in this way can only achieve the expected effect of Chen Changsheng. As far as he knows, there are good ingredients for brewing in this martial arts world, such as Tianshan Snow Lotus and Millennium Fire Lingji. So, searching for brewing materials is also one of the main purposes of his trip. At this moment, the wine in his hand had already been consumed, and Chen Changsheng lay on the back of his horse, drowsily asleep. Before, there were not many people along the way. However, as the road to Songshan sect gets closer and closer, there are clearly more Jianghu people on the official road. At this point, the people on the road also kept paying their respects to the handsome young man who was lying on his horse and sleeping soundly, wearing a drunken aura. After all, they had never seen such a free and unrestrained person in their behavior before. Not long after, Chen Changsheng, who was originally sleeping soundly, suddenly had a movement in his nose. A familiar aroma stirred his sense of smell. Chen Changsheng suddenly woke up and looked left and right, only to see a nearby inn on the roadside. The familiar aroma goes without saying, it must be the taste of wine. The aroma of wine. The inn is not big. Many people around are resting on the roadside. Waiter, serve the wine. The inn is small, and any disturbance is enough to touch everyone's heart. Upon hearing Chen Changsheng's voice, everyone's gaze turned towards him. However, when they saw the person entering, everyone was taken aback. At this moment, Chen Changsheng's face turned red and his whole body emitted a smell of alcohol. A pair of eyes casually swept around, but they were also intoxicated and shaky, as if a gust of wind could blow them down. Good guy, this feeling of not even walking steadily. Turns out to be a drunk who drank too much. Inside the inn, numerous martial arts figures glanced at each other but stopped paying attention. Quickly, the waiter brought a jar of wine to Chen Changsheng. Chen Changsheng looked at the jar of wine brought up by the waiter and shouted. Not enough, not enough. A jar of wine is not enough. Bring more jars. Many martial arts practitioners in the martial arts world, upon hearing these words, looked up and down at Chen Changsheng. Everyone didn't expect that this drunkard was so drunk that he even thought a jar of wine wasn't enough. I'm not afraid of getting drunk and dying like this after drinking too much. The shopkeeper slowly approached Chen Changsheng's side, staring at him with both eyes, and nodded at the table, saying, Kid, if you get drunk and don't have the money to pay, we'll chop you into pieces. The surface of the table was covered in knife marks, as if telling the history of this inn. The waiter's words were also full of warnings. However, Chen Changsheng smiled slightly and took out a broken silver from his pocket, throwing it to the shop assistant. Stop talking nonsense, quickly serve the wine, serve the good wine. Upon receiving the broken silver, the shop assistant looked deeply at Chen Changsheng and then brought out several jars of wine. When Chen Changsheng saw the wine, he slapped open the mud seal and drank it in large gulps. Soon, a jar of wine had already bottomed out. Who? Chen Changsheng slammed the wine jar heavily onto the table, wiped the corners of his mouth, belched, and chuckled softly. Only fine wine cannot be let down. But he didn't notice that 3 people wearing dark red clothes looked at each other across several tables, then stood up and slowly walked towards Chen Changsheng. At the same time, in the corner of this inn, there are more than 10 disciples in uniform sitting around the table, taking a break. At this moment, they all saw what was happening inside the inn. Among these people, there is a charming young girl. When she saw the 3 people wearing dark red clothes walking towards Chen Changsheng, she said to a young man next to her. Ling Hu's senior brother, look, that drunkard is going to have bad luck.